Hello. Yes, I was just reading a story. What was that? What was the name of the story? Okay, that must mean you're interested in reading it with me, perhaps. This is Google Glass. Let me see. Okay, you can Google the author, and his name is Nathaniel Hawthorne, and the title of the short story is Dr. Heidegger's Experiment, and it actually was written in the year around 1836 and published in 1837. Okay. Okay, Glass, stop recording. Okay, I'm going to put my Google Glass down right now because I found out the information I needed on the internet. But you can go ahead and download the PDF and read along with me. Okay, let's see. Yeah, it's a very old story. I'm fully aware of that, yes. No, there was no internet back then, no cell phones, no digitizing things, but people did write a lot of stories and they read a lot, quite a lot. Yes, I think you'll like this story because it's about a doctor who liked to perform experiments, and this one's on his friends, 4 of them. So go ahead and sit back, and I hope you enjoy it because the story begins right now. That very singular man, old Dr. Heidegger, once invited 4 venerable friends to meet him in his study. There were 3 white-bearded gentlemen, Mr. Medbourne, Colonel Killigrew, and Mr. Gasgagny, and a withered gentlewoman whose name was the widow Wycherley. They were all melancholy old creatures who had been unfortunate in life, and whose greatest misfortune it was that they were not long ago in their graves. Mr. Medbourne, in the vigor of his age, had been a prosperous merchant, but had lost his all by a frantic speculation, and now was little better than a mendicant. Colonel Killigrew had wasted his best years in his health and substance in the pursuit of sinful pleasures, which given birth to a brood of pains such as the gout and divers other torments of soul and body. Mr. Gasgagny was a ruined politician, a man of evil fame, or at least had been so till time had buried him from the knowledge of the present generation, and made him obscure instead of infamous. And as for the widow Wycherley, tradition tells us that she was a great beauty in her day, but for a long while past she had lived in deep seclusion, on account of certain scandalous stories which had prejudiced the gentry of the town against her. It is a circumstance worth mentioning that each of these old 3 gentlemen, Mr. Medbourne, Colonel Killigrew, and Mr. Gasgagny, were early lovers of the widow Wycherley, and had been once at the point of cutting each other's throats for the sake of pursuing her. And before proceeding further, I'd merely hint that Dr. Heidegger and his 4 guests were sometimes thought to be a little besides themselves, as it is not unfrequently the case with old people, when worried about present troubles or woeful recollections. My dear old friend," said Dr. Heidegger, "I am so glad you are here. Come, sit down. I am desirous of your assistance in one of those little experiments with which I amuse myself here in my study." And if all stories were true, Dr. Heidegger's study must have been a very curious place. It was a dim, old-fashioned chamber, festooned with cobwebs, besprinkled with antique dust, and around the walls stood several oaken bookcases, the lower shelves of which were filled with rows of gigantic folios and black leather quartos, and the upper leather with parchment-covered duodecimos. Over the central bookcase was a bronze bust of Hippocrates, with which, according to some authorities, Dr. Heidegger was accustomed to hold consultations in all difficult cases of his practice. In the obscurest corner of the room stood a tall and narrow oaken closet, with its door slightly ajar, within which doubtfully appeared a skeleton. Between the two bookcases was a huge looking-glass. I thought you were going to say Google Glass. Not yet. Okay, presenting its high and dusty plate within a tarnished gilt frame. Among many wonderful stories related of this mirror, it was fabled that the spirits of the doctor's deceased patients dwell within its verge, and would stare him in the face whenever he looked thitherward. The opposite side of the chamber was ornamented with the full-length portrait of a young lady, arrayed in the faded magnificence of silk and satin and brocade, and with a visage as faded as her dress. Above a half-century ago, Dr. Heidegger had been on the point of marriage with this young lady, but she had been affected with some slight disorder. She had swallowed one of her lover's prescriptions and died the bridal evening. The greatest curiosity of all was the study that remains to be mentioned. It was a ponderous folio volume bound in black leather with massive silver clasps. There were no letters and no words, and no one could tell the title of the book. Did you guess? But it was known, and well known, and thought to be a book about magic. And once, when a chambermaid had lifted it to merely brush off the dust, the skeleton had rattled itself in its closet, and the picture of the young lady had stepped 1 foot out of the floor, and ghastly faces appeared and peeped forth from the mirror, which the brazen head of hypocrisy frowned and said, "Forbear." Such was Dr. Heidegger's study. On the summer afternoon, certain things began to happen. Bound in black leather, to which Common affirmed to be a book of magic. Undoing the silver clasps, he opened up the volume and took from among its black leather pages a rose. Now, would you deem it possible that this rose of half a century could ever bloom again? "Nonsense," said the widow wisely, with a peevish toss of her head. "You might ask whether an old woman's wrinkled face could ever bloom again." "See," said Dr. Heidegger. He uncovered the vase and threw in the faded rose. And at first it lay on the surface of the fluid. Yes. And then it began to imbibe some of the moisture. Soon it became a singular change, became visible. The crushed dried petals stirred and assumed a deepening tinge of crimson, as if the flower were reviving from a death-like slumber. The slender stalk and twigs of the foliage became green, and there rose of half a century, looking as fresh as when Sylvia Ward had first given it to her lover. It was scarcely full blown, for some of its delicate red leaves curved modestly around its moist bosom, within which 2 or 3 dewdrops were sparkling. "That is certainly a very pretty deception," said one of the doctor's friends carelessly, however, for they had witnessed greater miracles at a conjurer's show. "Pray, how it was effected?" "Did you ever hear of the Fountain of Youth," asked Dr. Heidegger, "which Ponce de Leon, the Spanish adventurer, went in search of 2 or 3 centuries ago?" "But did Ponce de Leon ever find it?" asked the widow wisely. "No," answered Dr. Heidegger, "for he never sought it in the right place. The famous Fountain of Youth, if I am highly and rightly informed, is situated in the southern part of the Floridian Peninsula, not far from Lake Makako. Its source is overshadowed by several gigantic magnolias, with which, though numberless centuries old, have been kept as fresh as violets by the virtues of this wonderful water. An acquaintance of mine, knowing my curiosity in such matters, has sent me what you now see in the vase. Said Colonel Killigrew, who believed not a word of the doctor's story. And what may be the effect of this fluid on the human frame? You shall judge for yourself, my dear Colonel, replied Dr. Heidegger. And all of you, my respected friends, are welcome to so much of this admirable fluid as may restore you to the bloom of youth. For my own part, having much trouble in growing old, I am in no hurry to grow young again. And with your permission, of course, therefore I will merely watch the progress of the experiment. And while he spoke, Dr. Heidegger began filling the 4 champagne glasses with the water of the fountain of youth. It was apparently impregnated with an effervescent gas, for little bubbles were constantly ascending from the depths of the glasses and bursting into silvery spray at the surface. And though utter skeptics as to its rejuvenescent power, they were inclined to swallow it all at once. But to Dr. Heidegger besought them to stay a moment. Before you drink, my respectable old friends, said he, it would be well that with the experience of a lifetime to direct you should drop a few rules and regulations for your guidance in passing through a second time through the perils of youth. Think what a sin and shame it would be if you, with your particular advantages, you should not become the patterns of virtue and wisdom to all the young people of the age. The doctor's 4 venerable friends made him no answer except by feeble and tremulous laugh, and were so ridiculous was that idea, knowing how closely repentance treads behind the step of air. Should they ever go astray again? Drink then, he said, bowing. I rejoice that I have so well selected the subjects of my experiment. With palsied hands they raised the glasses to their lips. The liquor, if it really possessed such virtues as Dr. Heidegger imputed it to, could not have been bestowed on the 4 human beings who needed it more woefully. They looked as if they had never known what youth or pleasure was, but it had been through some offspring of nature's dotage, and always the grey, decrepit, sapless, miserable creatures who now sat stooping at the doctor's table without life enough in their souls or bodies to be animated even by the prospect of growing young again. They drank the water off and replaced their glasses on the table. Assuredly, there was almost immediate improvement in the aspect of the party, not unlike what might have been produced by a glass of generous wine, together with a sudden glow of cheerful sunshine brightening over all the visages at once. There was a healthful suffusion on their cheeks, instead of the ashen hue that had made them look so corpse-like. They gazed at one another, and fancied that some magic power had really begun to soothe away the deep and sad inscriptions which Father Time had so longly engraved on their brow. The widow wisely adjusted her cap, for she felt like almost a woman again. Give us more of this wonderful water, they cried. We are younger, but we're still too old. Quick, quick, give us more. Patience, patience, quoth Dr. Heidegger, who sat watching the experiment with philosophic coolness. You have spent a long time growing old. Surely you must be content to grow young in half an hour. But the water is at your service. Again filled the glasses with the liquor of youth, enough of which still remained in the vase to turn half the old people in the city to the age of their own grandchildren. While the bubbles were yet sparkling on the brim, the doctor's 4 guests snatched the glasses from the table and swallowed the contents with a single gulp. Was it delusion?